There is a scene the church never wanted you to know, not because it is false, but exactly because it is too true. Jesus was gathered with his closest disciples in a closed room in Jerusalem, the doors locked, the windows covered. No Roman gaze could reach what was happening inside. And in that silence, heavy with tension, he did something that no canonical text recorded. He pronounced a name. It wasn't Jesus. It wasn't Messiah. It wasn't any of the titles that would later be carved in stone, printed in Bibles, or proclaimed in cathedrals around the world. It was another name, an intimate name, a name that, according to the Gospel of Philip, when pronounced in that closed room, made something happen that goes beyond any conventional religious explanation. The environment seemed to alter. The disciples felt a wave cross their bodies, like a subtle electric current, strong enough to make them tremble inside. And beyond the walls of that room, in layers of reality invisible to human eyes, the forces that govern this world, those the Gnostics called archons, began to tremble. That was not a prayer. It was not a solemn blessing. It was vibration. It was a sound charged with a frequency so intense that the very architects of this distorted reality could not bear it. When the church had access to this passage, it did not just reject it destroyed it. Not because it was heresy, but because it was too dangerous. Because if people discovered what Jesus was really called, if they understood the force contained in those specific syllables, they would never again need intermediaries. Never again beg for absolution, never again ask permission to touch the divine. And that is exactly what we are going to explore today, not as a historical curiosity, but as an awakening. To understand what was hidden, we need to go back to the moment the hiding place was built. The year is 325 AD. The Roman Emperor Constantine faces a fragmented, unstable empire on the brink of collapse. He needed a solution that did not come from the battlefield. He needed something more powerful than armies. He needed a unifying narrative. That was how the Council of Nicaea was born. That meeting had much more political strategy than genuine spiritual search. There it was decided with votes and power disputes which texts would be considered sacred and which would be erased from the collective memory of humanity. The criterion was not truth, it was utility for control. The writings that taught submission remained, those that presented God as a distant and inaccessible authority, and human beings as guilty by nature, born in debt, needing external redemption. The texts that spoke of gnosis, of direct knowledge, of personal experience with the divine, were condemned. The Gnostics were persecuted, their books burned, their masters silenced. For more than 1,600 years, it was believed that these teachings had disappeared forever, but the desert keeps secrets with a patience that no empire can overcome. In 1945, an Egyptian peasant named Muhammad Ali al-Saman was digging the soil near the city of Nag Hammadi when his hoe hit something hard. It was a sealed clay jar, buried centuries before by monks who knew that repression was coming. Inside that jar were 13 papyrus codices, 52 texts, an entire library of knowledge that the world believed destroyed. These manuscripts functioned as a time capsule, buried by hands that trusted that one day when humanity was mature enough, the truth would return to the surface. That day has arrived, and what was hidden there was a profound revelation about the nature of this reality, about the entity you learned to call God, and about the fundamental error that gave rise to the world we know. Before continuing, I need you to release any resistance you may be feeling now. I am not asking you to abandon your faith. I am asking you to expand it. Because what the Nag Hammadi texts reveal is not a denial of the divine. It is a radical expansion of it. Many of you have already watched The Matrix. You know the central idea: humanity imprisoned in an artificial reality controlled by forces that feed on human energy. What few know is that the creators of the film themselves openly admitted that the story was inspired by Gnosticism. Cinema softened the most disturbing part of the myth, but the original texts do not have that kindness. In the Gnostic writings found in that jar, especially in the Apocryphon of John, everything begins before the beginning, before matter, before time, before anything we can name. There exists the pleroma, the divine totality, an ocean of pure light inhabited by beings called aeons, manifestations of absolute consciousness. Among these aeons, there was one in particular, the youngest, the most curious. Sophia, whose name in Greek means wisdom, Moved by a genuine creative impulse, Sophia desired to generate life. Just as the supreme source, the monad, had created the aeons, she wanted to create something beautiful, but she committed a fundamental error. She created alone, without her complementary principle, without the necessary balance between expansion and containment, between light and shadow, between the masculine and the feminine of the cosmos. For the Gnostics, all authentic creation requires this balance. When Sophia acted in isolation, what emerged was not a being of light. It was something distorted, an entity with the body of a serpent and the head of a lion, eyes burning like fire, carrying in itself the mark of the imbalance that gave it origin. Sophia felt fear, felt shame, expelled this creature from the pleroma, and hid it in a thick cloud, far from the sight of the other aeons. To this being, she gave the name Yaldabaoth, the son of chaos, the demiurge. And here is the point that makes everything shift. This is the God portrayed in the Old Testament. Born in separation, Yaldabaoth did not know his origin, did not know Sophia, did not know the monad. Upon awakening in the darkness, he saw only himself and, inflated by a blind ego, proclaimed to the void, "I am God and there is no other besides me." From the heights of the pleroma, Sophia responded. Her voice echoed like a warning that crossed layers of reality. "You are mistaken, Samael. Samael in Hebrew means God of the blind. But the demiurge could not see her. He only heard the voice. And that voice, instead of awakening humility in him, awakened panic. Dominated by the need to maintain control, he decided to create. He built a material world to hide, to assert himself, to prove that he was indeed the only God. He molded stars, planets, and physical laws that would function as invisible bars of a cosmic prison. To manage this creation, he generated helpers in his image, entities without a divine spark, mechanical, functional, the archons. In Greek, archon means ruler or authority, and just like the agents in the Matrix, the archons act as guardians of the system. They operate in subtle layers of reality, what today we would call the astral plane. They do not possess a soul. They do not create anything truly new. They only imitate, distort, and invert that which comes from the light. But there is a truth about the archons that few texts dare to state with as much clarity as the Nag Hammadi manuscripts. They are hungry. Since they were cut off from the source, the monad, they do not possess an internal reserve of energy. They are like batteries that are constantly depleted. To survive, they need to feed. And what do they feed on? Frequency, specifically the energy emitted by the divine sparks imprisoned here inside human bodies. Inside you. But there is a crucial detail in this dynamic. They cannot stand high frequencies. Genuine love, deep joy, serenity, gratitude, compassion. All of this corrodes them. What they can absorb, what truly nourishes them, are dense vibrations, fear, anguish, guilt, shame, hatred, despair. When you observe the trajectory of human history, you notice a pattern that is hard to ignore. Endless wars, epidemics, persecutions, massacres, repeated suffering generation after generation, as if there were an invisible hand that always finds a way to reignite the fire of chaos before humanity can breathe. For the Gnostics, none of this is an accident. It is planting. It is deliberate energetic cultivation. Every time you turn on the news and feel that cold in your stomach, that sensation of imminent threat that doesn't pass, something is being extracted from you. Every time you blame yourself excessively for a mistake, diminish yourself or hate yourself, this harvest happens. Every time you kneel before a distant divinity, believing you were born unworthy, a sinner, and in need of punishment, you are, without realizing it, feeding the jailer of your own prison. The religious and social systems were engineered with frightening precision to keep you in spiritual forgetfulness, to erase from your memory the most essential truth of all. You were not born to be a servant. You are a child of Sophia, imprisoned by an ancient deception. And there is a flaw in the system that they could never correct. When the demiurge molded human bodies from the matter of the earth, something went wrong. The bodies did not move. They were hollow forms, without life, without purpose. Sophia, observing everything from above and feeling compassion for the imprisoned sparks, used cunning. She led the demiurge to breathe his own spirit into these bodies. What he did not know is that in that breath, Sophia hid something precious, the divine spark, a fragment of the monad itself. Thus, without realizing it, the demiurge gave to humanity what he never had, a soul. The problem is that not everyone has awakened to this. The Gnostic text known as the Tripartite Tractate divides humanity into three distinct groups, and understanding which one you are in is not a matter of spiritual vanity, it is a matter of survival of consciousness. The hillocks, the material ones, are those totally trapped in the physical world. They believe they are only a body. They live for money, status, pleasure, appearance, and consumption. When one speaks of soul, consciousness, or awakening, their gaze goes blank. Not because they are evil, but because the spark inside them has not yet been activated. For the Gnostics, when they die, they simply dissolve. They are the background of the game. Then come the psychics, those of the soul. This is the largest group. They feel, they get emotional, they follow religions, they want to do good. However, they obey the rules imposed by the demiurge. They accept ready-made truths coming from external authorities, religious leaders, politicians, and power figures. They need external validation to feel saved. They are genuinely good people, but still asleep, comfortable inside the matrix. They do not question the walls because they never notice the walls exist. And then there are the pneumatics, those of the spirit. Pneuma in Greek means breath or spirit. These are the anomalies of the system, the questioners, the rebels, those in whom the divine spark is active, alive, and incandescent. If you are a pneumatic, from an early age you felt that you did not totally belong to this world. Not in an arrogant way, but in a way that hurts. You observe society, mechanical work, power disputes, and repeated wars with different names, and something seems profoundly wrong, as if everyone were taking a poorly written play too seriously. You have a thirst for knowledge that goes beyond ready-made answers. You don't just want to believe, you want to understand. You question everything. You carry a strange nostalgia for a place you never physically visited, but that you feel as home. If you are watching this video, if you spent your life feeling displaced from the herd, there are great chances you are a pneumatic. And that is exactly why the demiurge fears you, because you can awaken. And when a pneumatic awakens completely, the entire energy farm is at risk. So the question arises that all of this was building toward: how to awaken? How to interrupt the signal of the archons? How to cross the barrier that separates you from your divine origin? This leads us back to the name, but not as vague mysticism, but as resonance physics. In 1831, a brigade of British soldiers was marching across the Broughton Suspension Bridge. They marched in rhythmic, synchronized steps. Left, right, left, right. The rhythmic impact of the boots hit exactly the resonance frequency of the structure. The bridge began to vibrate violently, amplifying each oscillation until it broke and collapsed into the river. Since then, soldiers receive orders to break step when crossing bridges because the right frequency applied with consistency destroys structures that seemed unshakable. The demiurge's system works the same way. It maintains itself cohesive through a specific frequency built on illusion, fear, and time. A frequency that was carefully calibrated to keep the sparks imprisoned in low vibration, incapable of recognizing their own nature. The name revealed by Jesus is not a word. It is the counter frequency. It is the step out of rhythm that makes the structure crumble. Jesus did not come to found a religion. He was an envoy from the monad to deliver a code, a replacement code. When you say God or Lord, you are using titles, and these titles were hijacked in this world. Often when praying to the Lord without realizing it, you sign an energetic contract with the jailer of the prison. What you need is a direct connection, a frequency capable of crossing the archontic barrier without being intercepted. That which appears in the hidden Gnostic writings does not belong to any common language. It does not come from English, nor Hebrew, nor any language we use today. It is a sequence of primordial sounds prior to words, prior to the very idea of language. The archons dominate language because it fragments, separates, creates labels and hierarchies. Language can imprison, but vowels cannot. Vowels are pure breath. They are the spirit manifesting without form, without boundary, without the rigidity of a consonant that cuts the flow. This name is formed by 5 vowels: I, E, O, U, A. In the Pistis Sophia, this combination appears as the key that opens the treasury of light, and each of these vowels carries a specific function within the human vibrational field. The I represents the center, the internal axis, the column of fire that inhabits the middle of your being. The E symbolizes the breath, the invisible wind of the spirit in motion, the breath that animated the hollow bodies when Sophia hid the spark in the demiurge's breath. The O is the closure, the complete circle, the return to totality, the perfect form that has no beginning or end. The U is the bridge, the continuous flow that connects spirit and matter, the channel through which light descends and consciousness ascends. And the A is the absolute origin, the first source, the very voice of the monad before any creation. Together, these sounds do not form a word, they form a field, a vibrational geometry that the archons cannot imitate because they do not possess the spark that would give them access to this frequency. It is like a biometric password. It only works if you are who you say you are. But before any attempt to pronounce this name, there is an essential condition described in the Gospel of the Egyptians: silence. For the Gnostics, the highest name of God is not a sound, it is the silence that precedes the sound. Before releasing any vibration, it is necessary to enter this silent internal space, quiet the mind, and interrupt the constant noise of thoughts. This noise functions as a permanent transmitting station of the archons, keeping you tuned to their frequency without you noticing. Only from true emptiness is authentic sound born. Only from silence emerges the vibration that crosses the barrier. Now I will share the protocol. This is the activation ritual. You can practice it today, but there is a warning that needs to be said seriously. Do not do this if you are not prepared for real changes in your life. The matrix reacts. When you begin to cross the simulation with conscious intention, reality responds in ways that will seem strange. Small glitches appear in daily life. Synchronicities repeat with a frequency impossible to ignore. Numbers like 111 and 333 appear at moments that seem deliberate. Lucid dreams become intense, charged with symbolism that you feel but cannot completely translate. People who drain your energy begin to move away naturally. Others who carry the same spark begin to appear. This is not magic. It is the natural friction of awakening. It is the system trying to readjust itself in the face of a variable it cannot control. The first step is disconnection. Choose a silent environment. Turn off electronic devices, especially the cell phone. Artificial signals interfere with the subtle energy field of the human body in ways that conventional science is only beginning to map. Seek analog silence. Sit with your spine straight. Your vertebral column is not just a bone structure, it functions as a living antenna, capable of receiving and transmitting frequencies that go far beyond the conventional electromagnetic spectrum. The second step is the invocation of Sophia. Before any sound vibration, it is necessary to harmonize the emotional field. Recognize the flaw of the world without judgment, not with anger, not with despair, but with the serene clarity of one who finally understands the mechanism. Release forgiveness, not because the demiurge deserves it, but because anger keeps you in the frequency he needs to feed. Say internally with conviction, I forgive the darkness, for it knows not what it does. I invoke wisdom. This simple act stabilizes your frequency and opens the channel for what comes next. The third step is vibration. Inhale deeply, taking the air to the abdomen, feeling the expansion of the diaphragm. Upon releasing the air, intone the vowels aloud, I, E, O, U, A. Allow the sound to resonate in the chest, throat, and head. Do not rush. Let one vowel flow naturally into the other, like water flowing from one container to the next. While intoning, visualize a column of white light being born at the base of your spine, rising slowly through each vertebra, crossing the heart, the throat, the pineal gland, exiting through the top of the head, crossing the ceiling, the sky, the atmosphere, and piercing the dark cloud that the demiurge built to separate creation from the source. Practice for 7 minutes. The number 7 corresponds to the number of archons who govern the layers of this reality. Each minute of conscious vibration acts as a reprogramming of one of these layers, dissolving the energetic agreements you signed without knowing throughout your entire life. The fourth step is the decree. Finalize with an affirmation of absolute sovereignty. It is not a request, it is not a plea. It is an order issued by a spark that finally recognizes its own nature. In the internal silence after the vibration, declare with all the authority that inhabits you, I revoke all agreements with the demiurge. I am not a slave. I am a spark of the monad. I am awake. Upon opening your eyes, the environment may seem different. Colors more intense, sounds clearer, a subtle lightness in the body that is hard to name but impossible to ignore. This is not suggestion. This is the veil adjusting. It is the frequency of your energy field recalibrating to something closer to your true origin. The Nag Hammadi library was not hidden by chance. It was not just to preserve ancient texts from religious persecution. It was buried waiting for this time, this exact moment in history. Observe the world around you with open eyes. Chaos is increasing at a speed that has no historical precedent. The simulation undergoes constant reboots, increasingly frequent, increasingly intense. The archons panic because they are losing control of the collective frequency. They try to compensate with increasingly larger doses of fear, war, and division because they are hungry. The source of energy that sustained them for millennia is drying up. And it is drying up because people like you are waking up. They taught you to see yourself as small, as guilty, as powerless before greater forces. This was not a theological accident. It was a deliberate construction to keep the spark asleep, to ensure you never discovered what you carry inside you. The truth is that you carry the code that gave rise to the stars. You come from the lineage of Sophia. You are the flaw in the system. You are the error that corrects the matrix itself. And now you know the name. If this revelation has changed the way you perceive the reality of this world, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. We are unearthing the history that they have tried so desperately to bury. It is time to plant the seeds of the future. The next treasure of hidden knowledge will soon be revealed.